Right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for taking time out of your day today to join us in the second webinar on costing. We are going to focus today on getting laser accurate recipe costs using prep actions. So many of you might have seen prep actions in the app, but a lot of people, not quite sure exactly how to use them and when to use them. So we're going to go into that today. I'm your host, Doug Birmingham, and with me is Sarah Hassler.
Hi, I'm the Director of Customer Success and Support, and Doug is our Customer Success Manager. So you probably know his face more than mine. But happy to see everybody.
Yeah, we're really excited, for everyone to such great interest in this topic. We're really going to dive into some detailed information about how to use prep actions and getting costing. So a quick note before we dive in, we are going to be recording this. We're going to send along a link to the recording after we're done. This is part 2, so we're also going to send part 1 as well, so you have that information too. We are going to take questions at the end, but we're not going to answer questions about any specific recipe costing issues you're facing, in that specific way. Just we're going to keep things a little more general. But for that, we would recommend reaching out to support@getmeez.com. And I believe that's all my notes. We're also going to send a survey after this too, so you have time to give us feedback on the topic and request any future topics that we can do. So, all right. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So, thank you. Slide 2. So, the topic of this webinar is prep actions. So, to give you even more accurate costs, prep actions, to define it kind of generally, they're like modifiers to an ingredient. You can have one ingredient, in this case, like yellow onion, and you can see there's a list of modifiers beneath that. And the reason to use them is twofold. One for yield percentage, and the second for custom conversions. Now, we've built these prep actions into the system, mostly around produce items, but there are a few others too. So we've done a lot of this legwork for you. We've done tests on these hundreds of times. These are really good averages to work with. You can always add more and customize them yourself. We're going to go into all those details too. And just to give you a quick kind of demonstration about where these live, this is an ingredient page. Where we see yellow onion. If you search yellow onion in your account, you'd see this part of the ingredient page on the left-hand side. So that's your reference point. But to add it to a recipe, if you want to hit slide 3, you would actually click Edit and click on the ingredient in any recipe that uses, for instance, yellow onion, and you'll see them right there, just in gray, below the green apple icon that says yellow onion. So that's how you apply it. And we're going to go through, demonstrate that too, but I wanted to show you exactly where it all lives. So the reference point is on the ingredient page, but you apply it in the recipe page. But why do you apply this, right? So the real, big reason, I'd say the number one reason is the yield percentage. And that's a percentage of the usable product that you get after you trim or otherwise process a product. So for instance, in yellow onion, you buy 50-pound bag, but you don't use all 50 pounds. You trim, you discard, you peel, there's waste involved. So in meez, we call that a yield percentage. Sometimes some people call it trim loss. You'll see we have each prep action has its own yield percentage that you can pick one from. So you can have one ingredient and you can have multiple prep actions, each with a different yield percentage, depending on how you're doing it.
So it's important to note that the yield percentage is the amount that you use, not the amount that you waste, right? So what we lost in the 70% on the diced onion, we lost 30% of the 50 pounds, but we kept 70%. That's what that number means.
Right. So you have 1 pound of onions, you process it by slicing it, you lose, you're left with 0.7 pounds. Okay. Beautiful. So let's see that in action if we want to check out a recipe. So I have this recipe, French onion soup, and you'll see that it's fully costed out if you click on the cost tab for me. And on the left-hand side, we have 3 pounds of yellow onion. And we can see there that we are using a note that says peeled and thinly sliced. Now, it's important to see the note there is just text. It's not actually part of the ingredient. So that's a note saying to your cook, peel and slice this onion. But to meez, what you're saying is, I want you to take 3 pounds of onions and I want you to slice them up. So meez is going to do the math for you and say, I'm taking 3 pounds out of the 50-pound bag that we have. If what you really mean is I need you to prep a total of 3 pounds of sliced onion, that is when you would use a prep action, because you're going to need more than 3 pounds of onions to get the total of 3 pounds of sliced onions, right? So that's in essence when you would use a prep action.
Yes.
Any clarifying there, Sarah? Does that sound good?
No, that makes sense. So this right now is saying take 3 pounds of whole onions, peel them, slice them, toss out your waste. That's what you need for the recipe. But the chef may be intending for 3 pounds of finished product, which is sliced.
Exactly. So if we want to go to the ingredient page for yellow onion real quick, just to reference it again. So this is where the prep actions live for yellow onion. You see those are the prep actions. And you'll see if we want to use sliced, we're going to get that 70% yield percentage. So let's go quick back to the recipe. And to apply the prep action, we're going to hit edit. And just like I showed you earlier, you're going to click yellow onion and you're going to see those prep actions right below. And we're going to pick sliced. And now watch the cost. It just went pretty quick, but it went from 132 to 189. Because now we're baking into the recipe the fact that you lost 30% of those onions. So you can see extrapolating this to a much, let's say we're doing a catering event for this, or just over time, this stuff adds up. So you might, for a small batch like this, it might be, only 60 cents, but you do 100 times batch, we're talking $50, which can be a big difference. So that's when you use a prep action. All right, so let's go to my notes here. Just a little bonus tip. If you want to click on yellow onion for me one more time. If you want to change any of these yield percentages, you can actually just click edit on the yellow onion page, and you'll see the little pencil mark show up on every one of these. And you can just click on any of those, and the yield percentage is editable. You can just change right there. So if you're doing testing in your own kitchen and you think you should be more or less, go in and change it. It's yours to change. All right. So that was using a yield percentage for something that you're kind of trimming waste. But there are other ways to use a yield percentage that are very common. For instance, celery ribs, lemons and limes. This is a product you buy in, and when you prep it, you actually get more than the original piece, right? So 1 head of celery you might buy in, you actually get 10 ribs from it. Or you buy in a lime, you get 6 wedges. So you can use prep actions in the exact same way. Instead of 70%, we're going to talk about over 100%. We're going to go into 600%, for instance. So let's take an example of going to the recipe for Moscow Mule. And you'll notice my recipe calls for 1 each lime, wedge. It's 5 cents. If we were to click on lime wedge, and we'll see on the left-hand side under prep actions, the yield percentage is 600, which basically says I'm getting 6 pieces from the 1 piece. I'm getting 6 times the amount when I prep this, which makes sense, right? Because if we go back to the recipe for this 150 count case or so, if we click edit and we remove that prep action, you'll see the cost will jump up because we're now saying we're going to use a whole lime and the lime costs 30 cents. But as soon as you add that prep action, we're saying actually we're only using 1/6 of that lime, right? We're using 1 wedge. So that 600% yield now results in a lower cost. Okay. This can be very mind-blowing for a lot of people. It's not usually how people think about costing, but in a program like this, this is how you do it. You use the yield percentage, you just go greater than 100%. All right. So that was a nice little deep cut, but it does happen all the time. People use lime wedges and lemon wedges all the time. Cocktails are a really, really big part of meez. A lot of bar programs use it. So this is just how you would do that.
Yes, it's anytime that you're taking a whole product and you're creating multiple, what we like to call eaches out of it. So you're going to use 6 lime wedges, or maybe lemon wedges for you, you get 8. So this would then be 800%. It depends on what the finished product is, but this is how you get around having multiple eaches, as we like to call it.
This is a cool example here. You'll notice the juice is 100% yield because we're assuming you're going to just juice the whole lemon. I mean, the whole lime. It's not going to have any use after that. You're using the whole thing. But in the case of lime juice, the really important thing is that we now have a custom equivalency set. So this is really the second reason why we use prep actions. So if you want to go to slide 8, please.
Mhm.
So we covered this in the last webinar, but for those who weren't there or need a refresher, conversions are a huge part of meez. They're baked into the program, and they're the way you define the relationship between weight, volume, and each. So you can see here, there's the 3 kinds of units, right? You have weight, volume, and then everything else, whether it's a box, a case, a bunch, anything like that. That's all eaches.
And it's important to note this tab exists both on every single ingredient page and also every single recipe page, because you may have equivalencies for every ingredient, but you also have a finished, like 1 serving equals how much weight or how much volume for your recipes.
Yeah. You can click on, yeah, that one. Perfect. Think back to the yellow onion example. You can dice a yellow onion. A cup of large diced onion is not going to weigh the same as a cup of minced onion, right? Because there you'll have more weight within the minced onion cup. So that's why you would use custom conversions within this context. You would, the different ways you process an ingredient can create different weight to volume conversions or different each to volume conversions or whatever it might be. So this is where you establish that relationship. You establish it on the ingredient page, either in the prep action or on the U of M equivalency. And to take a real world example, if you want to go to the iceberg lettuce, please. Let's go to the actual lettuce.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So iceberg lettuce is going to feature in my burger, right? And if you click on the U of M equivalency tab there, we're going to see this is the equivalency that comes with meez. It says 1 head is about 600 grams. And there's no volume there. You can see that because head of iceberg doesn't really make sense to have as a volume measurement. But we do want to use in my recipe a cup of shredded lettuce. So in this case, what we can do is we can create a prep action to tell meez, I buy this product by the head, but I want to use it by the cup. And that's why we would create this prep action over here. We can see that you get a cup from 0.06 heads, and you also can bake in that yield percentage, which we talked about why that's going to be important, because you're discarding some of that lettuce. So if we go to back to the recipe and click on the cost tab, notice the detail here that it says it's missing a conversion. And if on the left-hand side, you notice that it says 1 cup of iceberg lettuce, there's no prep action. The prep action is always signified by that comma and then another term, right? And it's basically saying that I don't see how much of a cup I can get from this head of lettuce. So what we want to tell meez is we're going to tell you what the prep action is, and that will explain it to you. So let's click edit. And we're going to click on iceberg lettuce, and just the same way, we're going to see shredded right below it. And once we click shredded, meez will pick up and say, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about after I shred it, there is a conversion in place. 1 cup is 0.06. I can do this math for you. So that's another really important reason why you use prep actions. It's basically to tell meez, if I buy it this way and I use it this way, this is the relationship between those two.
Yes.
We kind of covered a lot of that in the first webinar. So if that's still kind of confusing or perplexing, I definitely recommend watching that one as well, because there's some really good information in there. Sometimes you're going to want to create a new prep action. Some of the ingredients don't have them. Some you want to just modify or create new ones. If I go back to my French onion soup, just to give an example, we have Gruyere at the bottom there. Again, it says Gruyere graded in a note. But what I want to do is I want to make a prep action there because maybe I'm discarding the rinds and that I am paying for those. So I want to make sure that's baked in. So let's click on let's click done and go into the Gruyere. Yep, perfect. And to create a new prep action, let's say we don't want to use shredded. Maybe we want to do something different. Let's click edit. And we can see there's a button there that says add prep action. So we'll click that. And we see this beautiful field here. This is where we would add the name. So let's say we're going to box grade it. And we can set the yield percentage to whatever we want. So maybe we discard 10% of it. So we want to write 90% as the total yield. So we're going to get 90% of the weight that we buy. Great. So now we baked in the yield percentage, but what if we want to use it by volume instead of pound? We're buying it by the pound. That's again where we would bring in these conversions, right? So we want to tell meez what the standard weight or what the weight to volume conversion is. You'll notice here, it's set to 8 ounces is 1 cup. And that's just kind of the default, right? That's the water equivalency. And it's essentially what this means is there is nothing set for this yet. That's kind of when you see 8 ounces equals 1 cup equals each, and the standard weight toggles on. It's basically says we don't have that conversion here. So what we can do is we can toggle it off, and we can put in whatever we'd like. Maybe we know what a cup of shredded Gruyere is. We could also, we can just type it in. But we can also use this really handy search bar. And a lot of people don't see this, but it's really nice. You can search for other ingredients and those prep actions in the database. So if we typed in Gruyere and we wanted to use, let's say, the weight to volume of that shredded one, we can just type in Gruyere and see it right there. And then when we click it, it populates it for us. And then we can modify it. Maybe it's a little bit more, a little bit less. Maybe in the yield percentage, you'll see is now 98. So maybe we want to modify that. But this all goes into creating your own prep action. So again, you can use our database information. You can do this, in the kitchen. You can throw a cup of grated Parm or grated Gruyere and, see what it weighs.
My cups are way more wasteful than this. Like this is very kind.
Yeah, those rinds are serious.
Yes.
All right, so that's how to create a new prep action. Now, you might not always want to create a new prep action. Sometimes if we want to go back to the slideshow, go to slide 9. Sometimes you actually want to create a new ingredient instead of a new prep action. And one of the classic examples is diced onion. If you wanted to add, let's say you started buying in pre-diced onion, you wouldn't want to use the prep action onions, diced, right? If you want to go to the next slide. Because onions, diced basically implies I'm buying in whole onions and I'm dicing them. So it's going to have that yield percentage. But if you're buying in pre-diced onions, there is no yield loss, or there's no trim loss. The yield percentage is 100%. You're taking the whole bag, unless you do go through it and throw it out, but that's another story. You would essentially, in theory, use 100% of it. So in this case, I probably wouldn't put a new prep action because, again, the ingredient onions, especially if you're costing, probably is associated with whole onions, and you don't want to have a different ingredient associated with the cost of that ingredient. So this is a very, very common case where people will just say, well, I'm buying in pre-diced onions, but I'm just calling it onions, diced. That's going to cause you some problems later on because it's just not.
It's going to be inaccurate. Yeah.
So keep that in mind when you're buying in products that might have similar. Garlic heads and pre-peeled garlic is another classic example, right? A lot of people will buy in both for different applications. And if you want to have both, it's the exact same thing. You'd have one ingredient called garlic, and which you would dice, you would mince, whatever. And then you'd have another one called peeled garlic, which you buy in peeled by the gallon, etc. Or the third option, if you want to click on the next slide, lemons, right? Sometimes you might have both. You're buying in whole lemons. You're also buying in bottled lemon juice for different applications. The lemon, juice would refer to a case of lemons you're buying that you are then juicing. A different ingredient for bottled lemon juice would be necessary for any application using just out of the bottle. You want to keep those things separate. So this is just another instance of when to use a prep action and when to use a new ingredient or a different ingredient.
And again, just to reiterate, every time you see that comma, that indicates that this is a prep action where we took lemon and then we did something else to it. Lemon that we juiced. That's what we're buying versus bottled lemon juice.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So just we went through a lot of that pretty quick, but we have limited time and I wanted to cover as much as we could. Just so as a conclusion, just remember that prep actions are like modifiers on any of your ingredients, and you can see those on the ingredient page. That's where you can add new prep actions, and that's where you can edit existing prep actions for yield percentage or for different custom conversions. So you always want to check out the ingredient page for all that information. And then when you want to apply them, you apply it on the recipe page. You click edit, you see the little grayed out kind of options right below the ingredient. and you would select the grayed out option to apply that prep action. Yeah, questions.
Questions is the next part. Is everybody still with us?
Haven't seen questions coming yet.
Yes.
Too mind-blowing.
Well, it is a Monday. We could just start there.
But we are available for any assistance with this kind of thing. If you do have questions, we have a really good support team. You can contact support@getmeez.com. You can go into the app if you want to quick show the question mark. Right on the top right, we always want to make sure you know, you can click the little question mark there. It opens up a chat. You can chat with us right at the top by clicking that little send us a message. Tell us what ingredient you're having trouble with, what recipe you're having trouble with, why it's not costing the way you want it to. Let us know. We can try to help you through it. You can always email support@getmeez. We do have, if you're looking at your recipes and you have 500 recipes and you don't even know where to start, we do costing audits for customers. We can go through all of your recipes. We can pinpoint all the questionable things that need to get corrected, or we can give suggestions on. We do all of that stuff. We're here to help. So please do reach out.
It's always important for me to note that this is a person behind this little robot thing. I know it looks like a robot, but there are people behind that. So please know when you type in a message here, you're going to get an actual live person writing back to you. One other thing I wanted to mention is our next webinar, which I think again will be in 2 weeks. We'll be answering your questions live. So if you do have, costing issues that you would like us to help you with live on a call, please respond to the survey with that, and we will get back to you and take as many questions as we can and do live examples on how to fix current issues that you're dealing with. But with that, if nobody has any further questions, I think we are at the end, and we'll let you get back to your Monday, hopefully better equipped with prep action knowledge for more accurate costing. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.